thank Kaiser Permanente again for sponsoring our little talks. It is nice to have them as a sponsor. They're very helpful and really help us work through all of these. Just a couple little logistic things. We are doing this in a little bit different format than what we have in the past with our with our little talks. This is in what's called a meeting format for Zoom, which does mean you have a little bit more capabilities to muting yourself or unmuting, as well as your video capabilities of having your video on or off. I do leave that to you and what you are comfortable with on the video. I do ask that you do mute yourself if possible, just because a lot of background noise often occurs. So as our speakers are talking, we don't have that occurring. Though when the speakers go on, each one of them is chatting, they may ask you to unmute or share something or possibly share your video. And again, that is certainly up to you and your comfort level. A couple other things I wanted to mention just on the A Little Help side is we do have next week is Colorado Gives Day. So I do hope you can consider and will consider supporting A Little Help on Colorado Gives Day. That's Tuesday, December 6th. Also on Tuesday, December 6th, all over Colorado, up in northern Colorado and our western slopes and in Metro Denver, we will be celebrating the holidays with a holiday gathering in each different location in the evening on December 6th. I do hope you can join us for those. It would be great. We do ask that you RSVP, and you can do that online, littlehelp.org/gatherings, or you can just go ahead and give our office a call and we'll get you on the RSVP list for each one of those locations. So to get us started, we are talking about spirituality, and that is in any form that you want it to take and how you believe and take spirituality. But we do know that often the holidays can be, they can be joyous and exciting, but they can be stressful and have a lot of different emotions come up. So I have asked the following 3 people to join us to kind of just help us navigate through what can be many different emotions that occur through this holiday season. I have asked Andy Dunning to join us, Hal Goldberg and Amanda Gregg. I am going to let each one of them introduce themselves and just kind of give you a little background about themselves rather than me going into it, as they can talk about themselves much better than I can. So we'll go ahead and get started. Andy is going to start us off.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here this afternoon. As Tanya said, my name's Andy Dunning. I'm the pastor at University Park United Methodist Church, which is on South University Boulevard, just across from the University of Denver. I've been working in Methodist churches and church-related nonprofit organizations for a little more than 30 years now, and Methodist pastors move around or sometimes get moved around from church to church. And so I've been at University Park now for coming up on 3 years. I started in February of 2020. So my own faith tradition, of course, is Protestant Christianity, but I want to speak today, as Tanya said, a little bit in much more general terms about spirituality and spiritual life and spiritual practice of whatever kind, and the way that those things might enrich and deepen our experience of the holidays, which, you know, as Tanya said, can be times when we have all kinds of emotions. We can be all over the place. So as I start out, I just want, and I'll say one other thing. I think that at the end of today's presentation, we may have some time for questions and comments, but I don't want to impinge on the presentations of Hal and Amanda. So I'm just going to say what I have to say and stop. And then hopefully if you have any questions or comments for me, you can include them in the chat, or I could even include my email in the chat if you want to get hold of me later for some reason. Anyway, I do want to offer my understanding of some of the terms that I'll be using today. We've probably all heard people draw a contrast between being spiritual on the one hand and being religious on the other. And I think there's an implication there that religion is often grounded in certain types of rigid or moralistic rules and dogmas and rituals that have maybe lost their meaning or their ability to speak to our experience because they've become rigid or moralistic, while on the other hand, spirituality tends to be thought of as less rule bound, less dogmatic, and maybe more authentic. Excuse me. I'm going to be using those terms a little bit differently today. I think of spirituality as kind of the more general or generic of the two terms, while religions of all kinds have specific beliefs about spiritual life and spiritual practice that are, grounded in their understanding of the world, their beliefs about the significance of human life and all that. So, like I said, today I want to speak almost generically about spirituality and say some things that I hope will apply to whatever spiritual or religious tradition you find most meaningful. I think of spirituality as the greater story in which our individual lives are embedded, or we believe our individual lives to be embedded. And that story that gives our lives their coherence and their ultimate sacred meaning and worth. Spirituality, I think, is grounded in the idea that human life and all of creation are holy and ultimately of great worth, and that holiness is grounded somehow in creation's interconnectedness. That's a common theme in spiritual life all over the world. So however we choose to define it, spirituality tends to focus on our interconnected nature, on our interdependence with each other and with the natural world. So that a common insight of spiritual life is that even though we may feel alone, we are in fact deeply connected to each other at every moment of our lives. There's another term that I'll use, and in fact, I've already used it, spiritual practice. And when I say spiritual practice, what I mean is any practice in which we engage intentionally to deepen our awareness of the relationship between that greater sacred story and our own individual lives, and also to allow that relationship to guide our actions and to guide our choices. So, for example, a Zen Buddhist might sit in Zazen meditation for 40 minutes or an hour every day, and over a long period of time, they might find that their understanding of themselves begins to shift in ways that makes them more spontaneously compassionate and less reactive, which again is a sort of a common outcome of spiritual practice if we engage in it over a period of years or decades. Every religion, of course, has a whole set of spiritual practices, and in one way or another, they tend, I think those spiritual practices tend to be directed at helping us realize what we might call, or what some religions have called, the true self, the person who we really are, that is beneath or aside from all of our necessary masks that we tend to wear, all of our posturing and our desires. And so much of religious language, the talk of religions and religious belief, is in one way or another symbolic of that process of discovering and living out of what we might call the true self. So whether it's the Torah or the Christian Bible, the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, the Pali Canon in Buddhism, or the Jataka sayings, the Tao Te Ching, whatever it is, these writings, these scriptures of various religious traditions are meant to help us cultivate our awareness of how our lives are related to that greater story in which we're embedded. I think in a lot of spiritual traditions, there's a kind of, a recognized narrative, kind of a recognized arc of what happens to us and in us as we engage in spiritual practice over a long period of time. This isn't a matter of being right or wrong, of like doing spirituality right or doing it wrong. It's just a kind of a recognition that people who engage in spiritual practice over a period of years or decades tend to follow or fall into a kind of progression. The Swiss psychiatrist C.G. Jung, who many of you may have read or know about, Jung talked about this as what he called two halves of life, although he didn't mean that life divides into even chronological halves. But the idea is that in our early life, we invest our time and our energy and our attention in very naturally building a kind of a personality or an adult persona, a way of being in the world. And if we're lucky, if things go well, We build what we might call a healthy ego, right? A sense of who we are, our boundaries, what we want out of life, our values, our goals, our, taste in music and recreation, all that kind of stuff. But as we continue our spiritual practice, we begin to be less attached to all of that, less invested in it. We begin to demand less from the world and to become less bothered by ambiguity or the idea that we can't know everything or do everything. I think over time, we begin to be content in releasing some of the abilities and drive that we had as young people and that naturally fall away from us as we age. Most importantly, we begin to recognize, I think, at our most fundamental level, our identity is our relationship with that greater story in which our individual lives are embedded. That is who we are at our most basic and primal level. One way I think that spiritual traditions help us do this, and here I am getting to the holidays, believe me, one way that spiritual traditions help us do this is to keep a calendar that kind of tracks the sacred stories of the faith. Christianity, right, is the tradition that I sort of know most deeply or best. Christianity has two calendars that run simultaneously. One is called the temporal and the other is called the sanctoral. The temporal is the festivals or the holidays that celebrate a series of events, usually events in the life of Jesus of Nazareth. And the sanctoral is the calendar of celebrations of saints, these exemplary people who've lived spiritual life beautifully and well, and after whom we maybe try to pattern ourselves or, we try to emulate them. Judaism, of course, has a year-long cycle of holy days and events. We've all heard of things like Yom Kippur or Rosh Hashanah. Islam has holy times of the year like Ramadan and Eid. Hinduism has Diwali. I mean, all religions, or religions all over the world, I should say, have these calendars of sacred moments and sacred events throughout the year. And as part of their calendar, religions all over the world throughout history mark often the importance or the symbolism of light in the darkest time of the year. Before the Christian festival of Advent and Christmas, which, it's no accident that these things fall right around the winter solstice. But before those festivals, there was the Germanic festival in Northern Europe of Yule, which celebrated light in the darkness. The Hindu festival of Diwali, which I mentioned just a minute ago, that celebrates the triumph of light and hope over darkness. Maybe some of you read a news story about the young Cherokee boy, I think he's in 4th grade, who just won an essay contest to participate in the White House Christmas tree lighting this year. And in his essay, he told a story from his own tradition about the origin of evergreen trees and wrote that it is a story about the way that evergreen trees keep their needles and keep their green throughout the coldest and darkest time of the year. And he said that that story is at its heart about the importance of faith and about the importance of reminding ourselves of hope and light in our darkest times. So when I talk about spirituality in the holidays, I think maybe that's the point that I most want to make, that spiritual traditions generally, again, I can't speak for every spiritual tradition, every faith tradition, certainly, but generally all over the world, spiritual traditions suggest that there is much less distinction between the inner life and the outer life than we might be tempted to believe. That things on the outside, or how we understand the things that we understand to be outside of ourselves, in fact, reflect critical moments in our spiritual life, in our spiritual development. And things like our faith stories, whatever they are, or natural phenomena, like I said, like the winter solstice, and then the gradually increasing daylight that follows, those things in spiritual life are recognized as symbolic of movements in our own inner life that gradually over time contribute to our spiritual growth. And I think that seeing our holidays in that way, as this time that is reflective somehow of our inner life or that leads us inward, can enrich them for us, even if we are experiencing the loneliness and the grief, the pain that sometimes comes with holidays, and even if we are experiencing the busyness and the distraction and the joys that come with holidays. So I want to finish just by asking a few kind of open-ended questions. And like I said, we may have some time to discuss some of this at the end of these presentations. The first one is there some aspect of your life right now in which you need to release your hopes or release your fears or release your investment in outcomes? And how might that release bring you light in your own darkness or your own anxiety or gloom? How might that release allow you to see a clearer path forward, allow light to come into your life? I think another question I would ask is, are there ways in which you can be a bearer of light and a bearer of hope to others in the darkness of their fear or their grief or their depression or whatever it is that they might be facing right now? I don't know if you're familiar with a book called The Book of Joy. It was written by a writer who was present at a gathering where the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu were the featured speakers. And both of them agreed that if we want to find our deepest happiness, our deepest joy, then we need to stop looking for that and instead seek to serve others and to find meaning, because out of service and meaning, a deep understanding of how our lives fit in those greater stories, then we'll find our happiness, we'll find our joy. So how might your life be related to the deeper meaning of the progress of, I don't want to be too grandiose here, but I guess I'm going to be, the progress of sort of creation to its fulfillment, to its ultimate completion? How might you participate in however small a way in the joy and the meaning that will be part of that process? So I think I'm going to stop there. And like I said, maybe we'll have a chance to talk later. Thanks again.
Thank you, Andy. I'm actually seeing a few little claps by people, so well done. Hal, I believe you're up next. Thanks.
Good afternoon, all. My name is Hal Goldberg. I have worked as a psychologist for many decades and have focused more recent in my practice on loss and grief. And as these holidays have so much festivity and so much lightness and so much joy, when we are facing a recent loss or a loss from many, many years ago, sometimes we don't feel like celebrating. And sometimes all this frivolity around us makes things worse for us. This whole world seems to not know that I am deeply grieving, that my sadness is unimaginable. And holidays sometimes are the very toughest times for that because of loss. Now, loss is not something that impacts the unfortunate few. We all are surrounded by loss, and the longer we live, the more loss we recognize in our lives. So during the holidays, it's very important to listen to your inner self. It's important to be compassionate with others and understanding others and caring for others and being empathetic for others. And even more important, to do that with yourself, to have compassion for yourself, to not beat yourself up because you are not feeling like celebrating, or to not beat up others because they're pulling you into things you're not interested in doing. It is okay to celebrate the holidays, and it's also okay not to celebrate the holidays. I think it would be important to keep whatever rituals that we have and do those as we can, whether, I won't go into examples of rituals. Also, to communicate our thoughts and our wishes to people close to us. I really don't want to go to this party because I am sure I will have a miserable time. I cannot put on a happy face, and I don't want to try. Then we should give ourselves permission not to do it. And as we speak with our friends, with our family, with people close to us about that, probably they will be understanding. And if not, That's their problem. So even though it's okay not to do those things, it is critical to connect with others. The loss is the loss of a social relationship, and the only way to get through the grieving of that loss is through social interaction. And that can, by social interaction, I'm not talking about a cocktail party. That could be one-on-one, having coffee with a friend, even a phone call, even an email. Email maybe not quite as intimate as a phone call, but to connect with people who are your support system and who will support you. Grieving is not a mental health issue. Grieving happens to all of us throughout our lives, and the longer we live, the more it happens. And so it's not necessary to see a therapist, to go into counseling if we're grieving. I think that professional services in supporting grieving make sense if we don't have anyone in our lives that we can talk to. But it is other than that, it's really not necessary, with the exception of if maybe we feel very stuck. You know, if it's been 4 years since our loss and we feel that we're still deeply mired in that sadness and it's preventing us from enjoying our life, then maybe some professional help. But I think really that's it. If you have others to talk to, friends, family, there are wonderful groups all over town for people who want to talk about grieving. And if you want any leads on those, let me know. I'm happy to give you that. As we have Thanksgiving in the rearview mirror several days ago, what a wonderful time to continue our Thanksgiving, to be thankful for all that we have. And sometimes it's hard to recognize that every day. Someone much smarter than me said, we are not grateful because we are happy. We are happy because we are grateful. And we all have so many blessings. The fact that we live in the United States and not in Haiti or Somalia or North Korea or on and on and on, Afghanistan, on and on, that we can worship as we want. We can believe whatever we want to believe. We can associate with those we want to associate. We have the freedom to read anything we want, to say anything we want, to be with people that we care and love. A lot of the world doesn't have that. Some people wake up in the morning and they think, okay, I'm going to think of 3 things I'm grateful for today, and that will help me on my way. I don't know. It works for some people. It doesn't work for some people. But gratitude is huge in our lives, and it will change it. I wanted to talk for a minute about the aging process, emotional aging in particular. It's very interesting that people in their 70s and 80s on all happiness scales see that as the happiest time of their lives. It's surprising because during the 70s and 80s, we're beset with losses. Losses of people we love, but also losses of our physical abilities. We can no longer do everything we could. Maybe we can no longer ski. Maybe we can no longer drive at some point, et cetera, et cetera. So we have all these losses of intellectual, it takes us longer to learn something. Our short-term memory, I forgot what I was going to say. anyway, so we have all these accumulating losses and we're still happier. Why is that? It doesn't make sense. Well, at this point in our lives, as we age, we are no longer trying to accumulate things. Andy spoke about that too, about in our younger days, it's getting ahead. It is working hard and striving. And as we age, there's much less stress. We're not raising families anymore, which is probably the most intense thing we have ever done. Also, we become less sensitive to what other people think of us. We're not out to make new friends everywhere we go. And if someone doesn't like us, hey, no big deal. And many of us as when we were younger, it was very important for everyone to think well of us. Our financial situation is no longer stressful. Even if we don't have the amount of money we want, we at least know what we have. We know what we have from now on, and we didn't before, and there's not that pressure. So someone said, we spend the first 3 quarters of our life gathering things, accumulating things, and the last quarter trying to give them away. I haven't been very successful in that. My kids all now have houses big enough that they can store things. So I said to them recently, I said, okay, all these things I have saved for you for decades, your 2nd grade pictures of horses and your 5th grade book reports and every report card you've ever had in your life. And, this picture of you when you were a brownie or a campfire girl when you were 6, all these things and all your stuffed animals, you're going to come get them. And if you don't, I'm going to throw them away. So they came over and rifled through everything and decided they wanted very little. Well, I kept the rest because I figure someday they'll want them. They say they won't, but I think they will. There's a lot to look forward to as we age, and the only time that when I talked about all the happiness evaluations and 70s, 80s, the only time that goes down is when we are very near death. Then it's very difficult, but not until then. Until then, things just keep getting better and better. Any thoughts, any comments? If you do, unmute yourself. If not, we'll hold on until later.
I have something quick to say. Thank you for the comment that says we are not grateful because we are happy. We are happy because we're grateful. It means a lot. It makes a big difference. And sometimes I almost feel guilty that I'm happy and not grieving because other people are. And then I feel compassion for them, and that's fine. But that I'm happy because I'm grateful is helpful to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Yvonne. And it's good to see you.
Yes, love that.
That was an important thing that you just said, that you use that. And because sometimes I feel a little, I don't know, almost guilty because of the good fortune. And I have so many things to be thankful for, but to use that to be compassionate to other people is something that is really valuable. And I think that's a really good point that you made.
It's powerful. Thank you, Mark. Yeah.
I was just going to mention that my guiding light in working with seniors and others this time of year is to default even more to active listening. That the person may be up one week, down the next, up for part of the visit, down for part of the visit. It's just ever more important to really connect to what they're saying, listening to the nuances of what they're saying, but all the ups and downs can come across in even just an hour visit. So just do your spiritual work by connecting as hard as you can to them.
Thank you, Bruce. Yes, the most important thing we can do in any relationship is to listen. Yeah. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Hal. We will, everyone, as you're kind of contemplating and have more to ask or share, we will have time at the end after Amanda is done. So please, keep the brains thinking, and we will move on, and then we will come back to opening it up again.
All right. Well, thanks, Tanya. Hi, everyone. I'm Amanda Gregg. I am the owner of Soaring Eagle Healing, and my main purpose in what I do with my business is really empowering people to become aware. And I think it really comes off of what Andy and Hal have said today about awareness, that we're really looking in this spiritual place. It can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And I think Andy gave us some great things to ponder and consider for ourselves. And it's a very personal journey. So I want to start off by saying that it's not a prescribed, you got to do this, you got to do that, it has to look like this. It's a really personal journey, and a place that you get to see what works for you and what really connects for you. And I think it's such a cool thing that A Little Help brought this to light, especially around the holiday season, because we can have a lot of things that are going on with our thoughts, a lot of things that are going on with our bodies, a lot of things that are going on with family. Different emotions that are coming up that are reminders. There might be a smell that's happening in your home during a period of time that reminds you of something and brings you back and allows you to travel down a road that maybe you haven't traveled down for a while. And it can bring up a lot of things. And so what I want to talk about today is really the connection between how we bring together body, mind, and spirit, and what that looks like, and some practical tools that we could really use. So first, I want to just talk about each area, talking about body, mind, and spirit, and just kind of dig a little bit deeper into those, because we can hear those words. We can instantly have something that we connect with, but going a little deeper can bring us to a new awareness for ourselves. And I think that's what this talk is about as well. A lot of times we hear these different things, but if we hear them over and over again, they can mean different things to us. So when we're talking about the mind, as I mentioned, especially at least for me in the holiday season, my mind can, all of our minds in a lot of different ways, for a lot of different reasons, in different scenarios, can start having like a storyline or something that kind of iterates or kind of goes round and round. And one thing that I teach my students is that we are not our mind. So our mind is something that is beautiful and we get to use as a tool while we're here on this planet. But really who we are and what Andy and Hal are talking about, our true selves, our inner selves, is actually something beyond our mind. So when you think about that and start to ponder that, it could be interesting to think about the thoughts that you think. It kind of gets a little bit interesting, but if you start looking at it and really saying, okay, who's behind that is listening to these thoughts? Like this consciousness, this presence that's behind the thoughts, that can help us start to really disconnect from some of those thoughts that go round and round. and really may or may not be true, but sometimes can get us really wound into a space where our emotions can start to come up and we can start to become very maybe upset, angry. Sometimes these can also instigate joy, all sorts of different things, but something to just think about when we look at our mind. The next part is our body. So again, I teach my students that we have a body, but we are not our body. So we have this body that we get to walk around and get on the planet and get to have our spirit, what I believe, encased in that and be able to interact here. But I am not my body. And so therefore I can use it as a tool here, which we'll talk about some of those movements and things that we can do to release some of our emotions. But when we really start to look at that a little bit closer, and again, I'm just bringing awareness to you to think differently. You may have had a certain relationship with your body. You may have had things that have happened over the years with your body. You may see that when the holidays happen, your body does something different. You may see when the weather changes that your body does something a little bit different. We're just becoming aware. We're not trying to change. We're not trying to do anything different. We're just becoming aware and listening and just being a part of that. But knowing, again, we're behind that and we are that consciousness that's be able to watch this all unfold. It kind of detaches us again just a little bit from what's actually going on in front of us and allowing us to let those circumstances and let those experiences come in and let them go out. Because as they get stuck in the body, those are some of the distresses and some of the diseases and some of the different things that start to collaborate in our body that start to happen. And when we can start to look at that a little bit different and bring that awareness to it, it can create those different feelings and create those different ways of being. Just like Andy said, the Zen master that sits and meditates for a long period of time over the course of time can find a difference in that. And when we can start having our awareness just a little bit different, that can also happen. And then the last part, spirit, that can mean a lot of different things. We can have different words for that as well. We can have some of the religious aspects, maybe talking about that. We may have spirit, universe, different things like that that we can look at. But again, from the beginning, what I said is really looking at that and really finding what it means for you and what that journey looks like for you. So it's kind of fun to just kind of dive into those three different areas. And if you look historically over the course of time, that actually there is a very powerful thing in threes. So you think about the Holy Trinity, you think about when we cross ourselves, you think about the different things that there are in different religions that a lot of times they come in three. And so when we can look at the power of these three things when they come together, I think it brings a different awareness to how we can approach, in this case, the holidays. But a lot of times I also teach my students it can be a way that we approach our relationships differently. It could be a way that we approach how we feed our bodies. It can be a way of how we approach and look at the different thoughts that are coming up and how we react to those. And like Hal was saying, how we give ourselves grace and we move through that for ourselves with compassion. So I think it's just fun to explore. And obviously I do, because my business is all about that. So with that, I want us to actually take the next few minutes just to go through a practice. So like Andy said, it's a very much a spiritual practice that we're practicing it a lot and we're being able to bring it into experience. I talk to my students a lot about we can understand things intellectually, but until we actually do them and move through them, then we have a different understanding and a different awareness. So we're going to take a moment here, and if you're comfortable, I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. I'm going to close my eyes. You can pop your eyes open at any moment and look at me. For those of you that don't have your video on but can still see me, great. For those of you that are maybe on phone, I will talk you through this. It's going to be some very simple movements. What I want you to take a moment right now is just to notice how your body's feeling. So just take a moment, just noticing how your body's feeling. Maybe there's some nervous energy, maybe there's some excitement, joy, tension, whatever it may be. Just notice. We're not judging or making anything different than what it is. So what we're going to start with is just a really gentle roll of our neck. So we're just taking it around in a really small circle, big circle. It's up to you. You be aware of your own body and your own movement. And we're just breathing. We're just noticing. The mind might be really noisy, but don't worry, just let it sort of go and just keep focusing on the movement. We're going to then take our circle the other direction, just really nice and slow. Our mind might be asking why we're doing this, but we don't need to answer it. Then we're just going to stop in the middle, take just a moment just to be aware. Our next simple movement, we're just going to take our shoulders and we're going to roll them backwards. So whatever that looks like for you, your own body, your own awareness. There's no right or wrong in the movement. The only thing is to really notice the movement and notice your breath. And then we're going to reverse that and take that forward. Few more times. Just allowing the mind just to relax. It's okay, anything that it's bringing in. And then we're going to stop in the center, eyes closed if you're comfortable, just focusing within. If we can eliminate some of the stimulus outside of our body, it helps just to bring ourselves to that inner seat, that inner true self that we've been talking about, just exploring that. So we're just noticing how our body may have changed from when we started to this moment right now. The last thing that we'll do together is a breathing exercise. So we're just keeping our eyes closed. And I'm just going to talk about this just for a moment. So just listen to me with eyes closed if you're comfortable. So this breathing exercise can be done in any moment in time. It can really bring us down from an anxious moment, from some sort of worry. It can also bring us down and help us just balance from any sort of excitement or any really heightened joyful experience. I know that we enjoy those, but when we can be in that balanced place, then we don't move so far between that really joyful to that really not so joyful. We could find that balance and that space that we can rest and watch both of them unfold. So what we do here, I'll talk through it and then we'll do it together a couple times. We're going to breathe in for 3 counts and I'll count. We'll hold for 3 and we'll breathe out. So right now, I just want you to breathe normal, just noticing how you feel. Maybe there is an anxious thought. Maybe there is a worry that you've had on your mind today or over this week. So just let that come to the forefront, and then we're just going to take this breathing exercise and see how we feel afterwards. So we're going to breathe in, 2, 3, hold, 2, 3, out, 2, 3, in, 2, 3, hold, 2, 3, out, 2, 3. 2 more times. In, 2, 3, hold, 2, 3, out, 2, 3. Last time. In, 2, 3, hold, 2, 3, out, 2, 3. So just breathing normally here, just noticing how you feel. The amount of breaths that you do during that period of time, you can do 6 cycles of that. You can do 10 cycles of that. You can do so many different things that can really help you in those moments. This can be done without anybody even knowing you're doing it because you don't have to close your eyes. But I invite you here as we come back together, just opening your eyes, any organic stretches or movements that you need to do as we come back together as a group. And just as we get into the question and answer portion, I'd be interested to hear if you're willing to share anything that may have changed for you, anything that you felt during that period of time, or any questions you have. But I'll hand it back to Tanya to move us into the next portion.
Thank you, Amanda. And actually, you did just lead us into the next portion. It really is just, hopefully most of you are aware of how to unmute if you have any questions. We'll just try to be respectful of others as someone's starting to speak. I know I just kind of hover down on the bottom and you should see your little mute button. If you would like to, speak, feel free to ask questions or make a comment. We don't need to go until 1 o'clock, but we do have until 1 o'clock. So feel free.
This is Barbara, and I have a question for Amanda. And I guess I would like a little more input on, you were talking about to be aware of my body changes. I was making some notes. And can you expand on that a little bit? I had like fall, winter, and maybe holidays and how the body is reacting. And then the question number 2 is, can you recommend, I liked your presentation, and can you recommend a book or other groups that would help me work on some of my meditation in the Wheat Ridge area? I don't feel like going to Aurora or, far away. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for those questions, Barbara. So what I was just saying about the body, the different changes that we can be privy to or have experiences of can pertain to the weather, can also pertain, for me, over the time change, and just being aware of those different things. And I think it's more of that awareness that we're watching that from a place of non-judgment, because this body that we have, we get to participate and be able to have this experience with it. And when we can really view that from a non-judgment, our body actually starts to be able to communicate better with us, 1. And 2, it starts to work with us rather than sometimes against us if we start to have some of that judgment around those things. And so if we can look at some of those things that are happening in a different light, we can also get some answers from our body that we're seeking. And so it really is being able to have those times that you do that. And it really also, you can see your body, like for me, when I'm in an argument or getting very excited about a subject with someone, I could see that my heartbeat starts to go faster. I could see that there's some different things that happen. And so therefore I could use things like that breathing exercise where I can calm myself down and not react right away to move forward in that. As far as, the Wheat Ridge area, love that area, grew up there, Barbara. So great area. I'm trying to think of some resources. I'd love to look at that a little bit more. Nothing specifically is coming to mind at the moment. I know a few reflexology people in that location. What I do with my business is I actually do virtual energy balancing sessions. So if you're interested in something like that, I would love to do that with you virtually. But I can look a little bit into the Wheat Ridge area and send those to Tanya, Barbara, if that'd be of interest.
And then how about a book or a manual? I was saying, that you would, you have so much experience, Amanda, that, you could probably recommend something that I could find at the library or on Amazon.
Absolutely. So what I have actually, Barbara, that I'd love to send you, Tanya, too, that you can share with everyone, is actually a whole reading log of a lot of books. But what I actually have is just some little tidbits underneath each of them, so people can select sort of what interests them. So I'd love to move that forward, or maybe you and I just connect, Barbara, and I can send that to you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Barbara, thank you. And Amanda, that does leave me, and this is for everyone. I will share Andy, Hal, and Amanda's information. And if they provide emails or phones, so that will go to you. So if you do have, further follow-up questions for all of them, they will be available to you. This recording will be shared. Oh shoot, I had one more thought and it just left me. Guess it's that short-term thing there, Hal, you were talking about as we age. Sorry about that. But are there any other questions? I'll kind of keep an eye. Has anyone else unmuted themselves? I'm looking
Can I
down.
ask a question, Tanya?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, Andy, I guess you had mentioned the Book of Joy, I believe. Is that right? Is that the same as Finding Moments of Joy, or is that a different book?
I think it's a different book.
Okay.
The Book of Joy, that's actually the title, and I think there is a subtitle, but I can't remember.
Yeah, because I've heard of Finding Moments of Joy as a book that's been
Mhm.
recommended a lot. But you had asked, I guess, the question during your part. You said, what helps you find joy?
Mhm.
Is that's what you had said? And for me, it's definitely volunteering. I mean, especially with a little help. I mean, I've been through a lot of loss in the last 4 years, and I know that, helping others is what really helps me. And, I do a lot of care calls for a little help, and it just, it really fills me. And in fact, this holiday season for Thanksgiving, this was our first Thanksgiving. We lost my sister in March, and we ended up inviting some of our care call people to Thanksgiving. And it was really a beautiful thing because we were able to, not only we were experiencing grief, but we were also expressing gratitude.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that you don't usually think of, but you can have both. So, yeah, that's just kind of what I wanted to share.
Thank you. I think that speaks so beautifully to what Hal was saying, and about sort of the validity and the importance of being present to all of these emotions during these times. And it also speaks eloquently, I think, to exactly what the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu say in the Book of Joy, which is that if you are seeking joy, one great way to find it is to stop seeking joy per se and instead seek to serve and be of value to others, and you find joy.
Yeah.
So thank you. That's
for sure.
lovely.
Yeah.
Okay, while we're sharing books, then my most recent reading has meant a lot, and I've read a lot. So Brené Brown reviews, and as many New York Times bestsellers, but she reviews all of the descriptions in her most recent book, Something of the Heart, identifying and defining all of the emotional experiences that we have. And by defining those, it's considered name it to tame it, that you can have that thought, think through what you're experiencing and define it well enough to understand yourself a bit better. And that's putting it simply. This is, she has extensive amounts of publication, but her very most recent is her accumulation of understanding of all of the emotions that we experience, and the concept of treating yourself by name it to tame it. Brené Brown.
Thank you, Yvonne.
Yes, Yvonne, that is I think Atlas of the Heart. Is that what? Yeah. And and in regard to what we were speaking about, name it to tame it, but something else is, if you can share it, you can bear it. Dealing with grief.
Thank you, Hal.